Go. Hey, girl.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you
I'm good. I'm good.
this Saturday evening? So we are joining together to discuss mental health and stress management in the workplace,
hmm
right? So here at Monique's Healing Lounge, we help people learn how to love and care for themselves. We discuss mental health and just trying to destigmatize mental illness, and also just have every experience we want somebody to learn from. And I know we have a lot of life experience. So I know that someone will benefit from this video. So thank
I
you
hope
for that.
so, definitely.
I'm sure they will. So you appeared on a previous episode, and there's more to come. But for the newcomers, if you can just tell us who you are.
Sure. My name is Katrina Drummond. I am 49 years old. I live in Queens, and I work in human resources benefits. Been doing it for about 20 years, so definitely familiar with this topic.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I felt she would be a great fit, because she's a professional and she works in HR slash benefit. So I'm sure she would have a lot to share. And we may have to have a part two, depending on, where this interview takes us.
Perfect.
So tell me, why did you agree to discuss this topic, mental health and stress management in the workplace?
Sure. So when you approach me with the topic, it is something that resonates with me because of my profession. I try to encourage employees to kind of balance their work life, um, to kind of help with dealing with mental health. So part of my job as being creative is to finding different things that employees can benefit from, whether it's just for themselves or their family members whom they may live with, or who they care for. Um, Oftentimes, historically, it's always been a battle for people as far as like dealing with their mental stresses at work. We have a lot of what we call presenteeism, where employees may have something personal going on at home with their children, their spouse, their parents, but they're afraid to take that time to deal with that situation. So they come to work and they try to do their jobs, and it could come across like they're not successful in their role. But in all reality, it's because they're trying to balance, should I say, two different things. So presenteeism is not always good. Like employers, sometimes we focus too much on the visual of seeing an employee sit at their desk, and that doesn't make them more productive. It just makes them fill a seat.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm definitely interested to know some of those creative ideas. And I guess that's something we can touch on a little
hmm
later. Being that that's part of what you do, it would be great to share, in hopes that somebody's workplace would watch this, and, or, people at work, things that they can possibly do to check in. And also something that you just said struck a bell. Beings that, so there's a statistic that I pulled up. I have to find out where I got it from, because I wrote these notes about a week ago. But it did state that stress and depression accounts for 51% of all work related illnesses.
hmm
Right? So it kind of speaks to what you just said, right? So you have situations at home, and you go to work and you bring those situations to work. Because honestly, they say, oh, once you walk through the door, you're supposed to leave, your stress and everything that you're going through at the door. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who try really hard to do that, but there are some situations, maybe it is health related, or, an occurrence that happened that morning, something that you just can't leave at the door,
Mhm.
right? So now you're walking into work with that baggage in addition to multiple things going on at work, right?
Absolutely.
So, I just wanted to speak on that because that was something that you just touched on. So, being that 51% of all work related illnesses happen at the job, where do you think the disconnect may be coming from? Like, why aren't the employers seeing this?
To be honest, I think, and this may be a little shock to some people, but I think one of the things that we benefited from, if that makes sense, from COVID is the new work-life balance. For many, many, many years, especially in specific types of industries, most employers kind of frowned upon working from home. But
Mhm.
that working from home benefit allows employees to balance their work and their home life, right? At the end of the day, I think what a lot of employers may need to come to realization with is that even if I'm sitting at my desk, if I have a situation going on at home that needs my attention, I'm going to handle the situation from my desk. So one way or another, that person is not giving you 100% because they're focused on their family. So
Mhm.
having that work-life balance benefit available to employees, it shows employees that the employer cares, and it also allows them to kind of dedicate a little bit more of themselves to their job. So I
Mhm.
think now, because of COVID, because of the quarantine and all of that kind of stuff, employers now see, okay, my team, my employees, they can be productive outside of the office. They don't need to just sit in there at their desk. Actually, most employees got more done. We still, like those of us who are on a hybrid work arrangement, we still get way more much done working from home than we do in the office. You remove that commute, the stresses of the commute, and I can just get up, shower, whatever, and log into my computer and start my day earlier than if I got to my seat. It's so much more productive for both myself and my company.
So, what would be the difference then? So you're home, you still, in fact, you are you're in that home situation that's stressing you out, right? So what's the difference if you're bringing that home issue to work or you're at home still facing the same issue?
Well, think about it. If you have something that you're facing and you have a lot more time in your mind to kind of play around with the idea of the what ifs and what happens and whatever, when you're commuting to the office, you left the situation at home and you didn't know how that situation was going to be handled. I'm gonna give you an example. I know in our last session we talked about grief and loss, and I explained about my situation. In the beginning stages of once my husband, who passed away, came home from the hospital, and we had to get a home attendant and all that kind of stuff. When we first started with that, the minute that woman would come into my home, my stress levels shot through the roof. And she was a great person, sweet, like she turned into like family. But initially, it's like, one, you have a stranger in your house. You don't know what they're going to be doing in your home. Two, how is that dynamic going to work? Is my husband going to be receptive of this strange person caring for them? The whole bus ride or train ride into the office, I'm freaking out. Like, what if he calls out to her and she doesn't listen? And because you don't really know this person. So that's my point. Those stress levels are building before you even walk in the door. So if you have a child, they're home, they're sick, let me take a step back. We grew up together. We were latchkey kids. They don't have that so much anymore, but we were latchkey kids. Just imagine back in the 80s or whatever, if we didn't feel well, but it wasn't anything too major. And our parents, we stayed home. They may have had to go to work, but they're worried all day because their child is home trying to kind of fend for themselves, with a head cold or whatever it might be. And they're checking in all day. Is that productive? Absolutely not. And
Mhm.
today, that parent could get arrested. So
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
lot of weight that employees carry on their shoulders. Even when you're a star employee, you always feel like you're competing and you have something to prove. So what does that happen when your family or your home life situation comes into play? You start to wonder, oh my God, are they going to think that I'm slacking? Oh, am I going to get fired? Oh, what is my bonus or my raise going to look like because I had to stay home and take care of my kids for a total of a month out of the whole year? You know, it's a
Mhm.
lot of things that play in employees' minds that aren't necessarily true. Employers are recognizing, and you can do your research on it, um, now more than ever, the importance of providing resources for mental health. We have EAP programs, which is the Employee Assistance Program. It not only helps in crisis, because a lot of people think, oh, that's like a suicide hotline, and it's not. It can help you with mental health issues. It can help you financial, like with financial issues, legal issues. It's a number of things that the EAP programs can assist you with, but employees don't know that. That's a benefit that's been around for many years. You have
Mhm.
that. Now a lot of employers are touching in on meditation sessions. So at my company alone, we do a monthly meditation session. We call it mindless meditation. And it's a renowned you know specialist that sits with us twice a day. So we offer it globally to our employees. And I have to say, like, I've attended some of the sessions, and walking away from it, you're like, wow, you feel so much different, because not only is he making you think about things that you may have suppressed, like that doesn't apply to me, when in actuality it does. He
Mhm.
also does breathing exercises with us. So we're calming ourselves. He's teaching us how to do that on our own. So those are some of the things that employers are putting into place. You've probably heard of apps like Calm and Cenavello. Those are other things that we as employers, we make available to our employees and their families, where you can talk to a counselor 24/7 if you need to. Um, and then most importantly, a lot of companies have ERG groups. ERG stands for Employee Resource Group, and
Mm.
that's internal, and it's made up of your peers and your colleagues for different reasons. We have like our Pride ERG group. We have another one I can't say the name because it's specific to our company, but another one that deals with mental health in the workplace. Um, you have people of color, Asians, Latinos. It's all different employee resource groups that they're your peers. They know your struggle is, what you're going through, and they can relate, and you can like kind of network with each other internally, right? So there's a lot of different things out there. It's a matter of the employee knowing and understanding what's available to them and the confidentiality of it. A lot of times that is what makes employees hesitant, because they
That's
think,
true.
if I call this, you know,
Mhm.
counseling service, whether it's the EAP, especially the EAP, or like calm.com or something like that. They think, as the employer, we're getting that information back, and we know Katrina called and she was suicidal or whatever. We don't. We just get, it's very, very plain data that will say you had 115 calls in this month, and they may have been related to these particular topics, but we don't know who they're tied to. We don't get reporting that says Katrina called 15 times, or we see none of that. None of it. But employees don't believe that. And they think that, oh, if I call, then my employer is going to know that I was struggling with mental health, or
Yeah.
um, I'm having fertility issues, or, we don't see that. We don't see that information.
Yeah. So it sounds like the agency that you work for, they're getting it, right?
Oh,
They
no.
they They're putting things out for their employees. Um, so I guess I'm more so focused on the companies that aren't, right? Um, so again, with that stat, do you do you know why? Do you have anything to share as to why you think they're resistant to it? Um,
I think, to be honest, I think almost all companies offer it, right? They offer some form of assistance. The problem stems back to what I said, employees being comfortable and seeking those services. However, for those who don't put the spotlight on it, that's where the issue is. Everybody has EAP because a lot of the ancillary benefits have that EAP component built in already, and it's a free service. But not every company spotlights the services that are available. So it could be because they don't have the resources, because to be quite honest, anything around wellness, if you want to roll that program out successfully, it takes dedication, it takes research, coordination, all of that. I'm so sorry. It takes all of that kind of stuff in order for it to be a successful program, right? Um, but a lot of times you have employers, they don't do it. It's like, okay, we give you EAP. It's up to you to go and seek the assistance. But employees don't understand that, they don't know where to turn. So I think if employers recognize that you have to, anything regarding benefits, you have to teach, you have to. Employees don't understand the medical coverage, they don't understand dental. So what makes anyone think that they're going to understand like services like this? You have to educate. That's the best
yeah,
way to get the best return on your investment from benefits perspective. You want employees to use what you're spending money for. But if they don't understand it, they're not going to utilize it. And if they don't utilize it, you're just wasting your money.
right. Okay. Um, so I want to jump back to the, oh no, we spoke about that already. Okay. So all right, so just to jump back real quick to the working from home thing, you believe that it's better for people's mental health to work from home than to physically go into the office. How do you like what is your take on working from home? Like, is it a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to mental health?
It depends on the individual and the level of the illness. I feel like any type of illness, um, you need to separate and have some type of time to deal with it, get on some type of regimen, whether you're at home or you're at work. A lot of times, employees don't realize they can go out on short-term disability if they're dealing with something around mental health, especially if you're working with the licensed professional, they're putting you on a medication. Those medications take a little bit of time to get into your system and actively
Right.
start working. And at the start of taking some of those meds, it may make you drowsy, it may make you irritable, so you need that time to adjust. But again, employees don't take that, go on the STD for that, um, because we go back to confidentiality. They think, oh, I don't want anybody to know that I'm struggling with my mental health or mental illness. Um, but should it just be, if I'm answering your question correctly, or should it just be designated to people with mental health to work from home remotely? No, I think that it should be an option or even a benefit. Like the hybrid approach, I totally get it, right? You do need some type of office presence because of the collaboration. Um, Even as a single woman, like when we were in quarantine, mentally it played a toll because it's like I couldn't be around my family. I couldn't be around anybody. So now I'm working by myself, and the only way I can talk to my colleagues is through Zoom or on the phone, opposed to, hey, I'm running to you in the kitchen, grabbing a cup of coffee, and maybe we catch up on a project that we're working on or whatever it might be. That was taken away from us for 2.5 years. But
Yeah.
now, we have the privileged to be able to get some normalcy back into our life. At the same token, employers are seeing that it can be done, split, right? Partially in the office, partially working from home. So it is a fair balance, I think, and I've heard this over and over again. Employees are getting a little nervous around the fact that you may go back working full time in office, and
Yeah.
that has caused a lot of people to quit their jobs, look for other
Yeah.
employment, or just start working for
Yeah, because I've
themselves.
heard a couple of people that I know saying, they're actually mad that they got to start going back to the office. And I'm just like, but you were going to the office prior to COVID. So I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people, like, we started out 1 day a week, and it was like, okay, I could do the 1 day. And then it quickly advanced to 2 days a week in the office. And I get it. I'm still okay with the 2 days because initially I thought we were going to be 2 days anyway. Because I joined my company remotely. Like, when I was hired, we were
Oh,
still working from home. And that is something else I could talk to you about. But um now if we do increase those number of days, then it's going to be like, oh, because I don't take public transportation anymore. It's too much going on our New York
yeah,
City subways and stuff like that. I'm not putting myself at risk.
yeah,
People are very careless with protecting themselves or whatever, but I digress. um I think that it's, if employers continue on a hybrid approach, it is a benefit that employees will feel like, okay, they do care. Yeah, we have to go
okay,
back, but they
okay.
do care that we've struck this balance between our work life and our home life. You know what I mean? So I think it would be fine. Nobody's gonna 100% agree with anything.
Right, right, right. Okay, so that's leading us into the next question that I have, which is what are some ways that an employer could start to address some stress causing factors? And I think one of them would be, like you said, hybrid,
Hmm.
right? I did have here on my list about having a safe and compassionate employee assistance program. And the reason why I say that is the last job that I had, I called the EAP program, and the person that picked up the phone, I didn't feel comfortable with her. I felt like she was judging me for what I needed assistance for. And the therapist never called me. So it's like, yeah, you have the programs out there, but who are you hiring to answer these phones,
So
right?
I don't.
The
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mhm. So I mean, the first person that picks up the phone, it's gonna navigate the rest of what you feel and what you do and how you
Hmm.
go about it. And so the programs may be out there, but who are you hiring for these positions?
So that's a very good point that you're making. Um, I don't know exactly when you contacted at EAP, like how long ago, was it during quarantine, so on and so forth. But even to today, a lot of the companies that do offer EAP programs, I'm talking about the vendors, they are struggling with staff. They're struggling so hard. I've had in the past, if I had to put an employee in contact with a licensed professional, um, one, two, three. But now the licensed professionals are kind of far and few in between, right? So now we may have to wait a week. And I'm like, we can't wait a week. We can't wait a week because somebody could be in crisis. So that's where our medical plan could step in, right? Our medical plan, most medical plans, they have behavioral health services. Just like you could get on the phone with a 24-hour nurse through your medical provider, you can also get on 24 hours with behavioral specialist through your medical provider. So that is another resource that is available to employees. And yes, just like with any other customer service, you're going to come across somebody that is not doing their job, unfortunately. Um, but to me, if someone is in crisis, they're not thinking about like,
I mean, first of all, if you're in crisis, you need to be calling 911. That's first of
true.
all. Second of all, the phone operator is not a therapist, right? She's the one that's going to make the calls to the people, right? Because that's her job. She's to make the calls to the people to set the therapist, whoever, up with you. So my thing is, if the phone operator, she picks up the phone, so it's not necessarily like therapists being few and far between. I'm specifically talking about the phone operator.
Yes, again, so as an employer, that's out of our control, honestly. The
Right. And
hiring,
that's horrible
it
though.
is, but it's
Because who
whoever the
controls,
carrier is.
man, that can really affect a lot of people. And that can also, like, I call back. I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'll go through my health insurance. Right.
Mhm.
And how many people have that mentality? Like, you know what? I didn't feel right. Like, I felt like she judged me. Like, who monitors the people that are picking up the calls and stuff to make the people feel safe and comfortable to
So,
call?
from my experience, what I've gotten is the feedback from the employees. So, if they've been put on hold for a long time, or if something like what happened to you happened to someone that I was working with, they they're not shy about sending me an email or picking up the phone and calling me and say, Katrina, I called the EAP program and this is what happened. This is not a good experience, and they'll like go into it, and then I'll get as much details as I can. One thing I am for my employees is an advocate. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because again,
Right.
I feel like it's not my job, but that's my personal personality, right? I
Right.
feel like I understand it and I know what
Right.
your rights are, so I'm gonna fight for you. You know what I mean? So,
Right. So that's kind of what sets you and others like you above the rest,
right.
because you're going and I'm sure they feel comfortable knowing, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to Mrs. Drummond because I know she's gonna get it done. Right. Versus
Exactly.
other people who just don't care. So,
Exactly.
all right.
But what does that do to Mrs. Drummond?
Right.
I
Right.
start to take on people's problems, because it's like, oh my God, I feel bad, I don't want people to go through that. Or I may have had some type of similar situation, not as huge as what they might be going through, and I just know what I went through, so it's like, oh my God, I feel bad,
Right. Right. So it's
so
like burnout, compassion fatigue, like like all of that, right? Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's a lot for one or two people to bear. Um, so what do you think of some other ways that an employer could start to address? So you named the EAP program, um, you named the employee resources group, and I had something similar here as well. Um, Yeah, so like appointing, I put like a mental health because I didn't know the name of it, but like, like a mental health team
So
to
that's
kind
the
of like,
ERG.
right. So, okay, so that was similar.
So something else that we did, was we introduced like training sessions for managers, to identify, not to become a counselor, but just to
Right,
identify if your direct report or maybe even another colleague is struggling. You know what I mean? We created a cheat sheet that we shared with like not employers, I'm sorry, managers, so that let's say you see Katrina's not being herself. She's usually a bubbly person or whatever, and she just seems a little distant and maybe dark. You could have the conversation with her without prying, to say, you seem to be a little off. I don't, really know what you're going through, but I just wanted to share this list of resources with you. Maybe it could be of assistance to you without prying. And Katrina might get that piece of paper that has all of our mental health resources and be like, wow, I didn't even know we had this. I didn't know I could call this number. You know what I mean? So
so
The training had to include, don't try to become the licensed professional, because that's not your job, and it could feel intrusive by the employee. But
Yeah.
here, I'm offering you some help. You do with it what you may, but this is what we have. And if you need it, it's there for you.
So then that means the managers would actually have to start for the ones that aren't, like coming out of their offices and mingling with their workers.
So the beauty of, I can speak for financial services and insurance, right? Because that's my background. Um, the managers are on the floor already. There's not a lot of offices set up anymore. You have to be super, super senior at this point, to be sitting in an office. You have executive directors, you have managing partners that sit on the floor with their teams. So
Oh,
the office concept is going away. It's open collaboration. So yeah, they can see Katrina's off. Katrina's usually jovial and joking around, whatever. And she seems a little distant these last few weeks. Let me talk to Katrina and see what's going on. Or
okay.
that manager, or even like exec, might reach out to HR and say, someone's on my team, I think they're struggling with whatever, because we had those sessions. And what we're going to introduce shortly are sessions like that, but for our employees. Like, how do you identify if your peer is struggling? Like, they may be more comfortable getting advice from you as being their peer than they would
Yeah.
from their manager, because they think that
Right.
with the manager, I'm more judged. Like, I can't do my
Right.
job. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And scared that not only will they be judged, but they may be reprimanded or fired as a result. Because that's that fear. All right. So guess what? We're less than a minute. We're gonna shut this off right now, and we're gonna jump back on Zoom, guys. This is getting
Okay.
good. All right. We'll be right back.